All right. So the assignment that we begin tonight is a little database assignment called ClubDB. It's going to have several pieces to it, so I'm actually making it worth a bit more than previous assignments. What the heck was that? I just saw a flash of screen, but doesn't appear to be. No, it's doing it again. Okay, well, looks like I'm still recording, so I'll assume I am until I find out that there's nothing on the recording when I'm done. Anyway, so we'll download the spec. There is a script to build this in MySQL, which we'll need to run, and then I have a starter project for you. So I'm going to download all three of those to my 288 folder here on my hard drive. And we'll take a little look, first of all, at the spec. Okay. So the idea here is a dinner club that has both a sports bar side and a restaurant side. And we're going to allow users to log in and examine the status of their account. So there'll be a login screen, which is just a user ID and a password. That'll take them to a welcome screen for the member. That does allow them to update some personal data, member data, and so we'll have a database update option there. We'll also have a viewing of the purchase history, which can be either from a start date or all history. So there'll be an update function and then a view purchases, which will be a separate screen, and so we kind of cycle around to the welcome screen. And well, I've got a lot of information about required elements and so forth, but tonight we're just going to get started. I think I have some screens. Oh, and I've got some SQL code that we'll be using. Not in this class, we don't require you to build your own SQL code because we don't assume that you've had any SQL exposure yet. So we'll provide some of that and show you how to incorporate it into your servlets and the like. And there we go, finally down to, so the first screen is just a login authentication screen, and that takes you to the main screen, which shows member data, ID, name fields, a status, and a member date, and then a password. So there are a few things that you can update here, such as the name and the password. And so there's an update member data function on that welcome screen, but there's also the possibility of viewing purchases either from a start date or not, and I put that in three separate text fields because we're not going to get fancy in this version of the program with dates. We're actually going to, in the next version of the program, which introduces persistence, the JPA package, we'll start to use dates a little bit more directly. And then if you do ask for purchases, you get a screen that looks like this with the purchases from a particular date and the amounts, and then a total line showing the amount due and how many records were in the purchase list. All right, so the script, the database is very simple, and the script is in the Club SQL. So if I open that with, I'm going to open it with WordPad just to give you a quick look. You can rerun this script as often as you need to. it will drop the table or the database called club, and then it builds a members table which has the member data inserted after that. Then it's going to build a codes, so each of those transaction codes are represented in the master file of TBL codes, and then the final table, just a 3-table little system, has the purchases. Purchases are separated by a debit versus credit. So a debit is a purchase within the club, and it'll have a purchase date and a transaction type of D for debits, and then transcode that indicates what the item actually was and the amount. And then somewhere down here in the data, you'll start seeing C. So credit are payments against the balances due. All right. We want to load that script into MySQL. So you're going to want to open up the MySQL command window, is the way I do everything, because we really just need to muck around a little bit and do some queries here and there. Most of what we do will be, of course, inside our Java code. So the command line client, and if you have one of our drives and you built it the way I'd asked, it was Sesame as the password, but obviously it can be anything that you want for your own setup. And if I show databases, I do not have ClubDB listed on my system here yet. So I am going to load club.sql. You're going to need to know where it is exactly in your system. So you can find it and then indicate the path can be clicked on and copied. So mine's just in IS-288 right on my C drive, so it'll be fairly easy. But when you run the command to load the database, it's \. That was our attendance quiz, and then the full path, including the name of the database. So it's C:IS-288 in my case /club.sql. And there's no semicolon on this command. Most of the SQL commands in the command window will require a semicolon, but this one doesn't. And if you hit enter, you'll get a bunch of changed query OK, changed rows, 26 rows for members, 12 rows for codes, and 554 rows for purchases. And we had a question. All right, so now if we show tables, or excuse me, show databases, we have the club database, and if we use club and show tables, we've got those 3 tables: codes, members, and purchases. So you can then describe the various tables. So if we describe TBL members, we see the data layout, and if we describe TBL purchases, we can see that a member has a member ID as the primary key, and the purchases has a member ID link, although the primary key in purchases is an auto increment ID field, so the system SQL engine is keeping track of that sequential number for the ID of purchases. And that'll be useful when we do the JPA stuff. Doesn't really matter for our first version. All right, I'm going to open up the starter project and see what I can't remember what I put in here. Oh, it's just JSPs and Java file. So it's not actually a a project. So I guess we'll have to build our own project. Okay, so we'll do that from NetBeans. So File, New Project. This is a Java web application as before. I'm going to call it ClubDB. Tomcat EE7 is fine, no changes there, and no frameworks. That's for the next level course, so we will finish. All right. Now, I am going to unzip, now that I have the file, or the project in my folder, I'm going to unzip the login JSP, which will be our focus tonight. So from inside that, I'm going to grab, copy out logon JSP, put it into my source, or my web folder rather, right next to the index HTML. And my project now sees it, and we'll take a quick look at what's expected here. Created a while ago. So, nothing yet much going on with our page. We do have a form called Club Logon, and so what we will have as our first step after the logon is Club Logon Servlet, and we will see if we can manage to get a connection going to our database and pull some information out of it. So with that, I don't have my web XML file yet, so let's build a couple of source packages and start putting some things together. So we're going to have a new Java package called Servlets, as has been our habit. And then I'm going to add another package, a new Java package for business, our business model, which we will have a data-backed bean, in this case, of the member. So we are going to build a member object to manage the member activities. And I guess we're ready to, well, actually, let's build the bean first while we're here. So I'm going to have a member.java object, and the member will have all of the fields. So the object, the member.java object, will have all of the fields from the TBL members table. And this is sort of the crux of the problem of persistence, which we really won't address till the next project. But how do you map, rows in a table to Java objects? And the first step is typically to create a plain old Java object, which is a representation of your data row. So let's do that. Oh, and the other thing I don't think I mentioned when we opened this up is that this, I think I might have put it on the spec, or on the assignment description. Note that this assignment will have many parallels to the final project. So my plan is, perhaps even by next week, have the final project posted as well, even though there'll be one between. So we're going to do Program 5, which is this ClubDB database. Then there will be a Program 6, which is the persistence, that'll still be based on ClubDB. And then the only other project is the final project, which you'll do mostly on your own. But I'm going to make that available here in the next week or so, so that as we kind of get going and get building a ClubDB, you'll also be able to be working sort of in parallel on the final project if you so desire. All right, because my gosh, there are only 5 weeks is left after this one. Well, 6, because we don't have a final exam. We get to use finals week as our last regular week. Okay, so servlets. Club logon is my action, so I'm going to right-click and ask for a new servlet. And this will be club logon servlet. What did I just say? I just said I was going to do the member, and then I immediately started working on the servlet, didn't I? Let's cancel this. Sorry. Let's work on the member first. That's what I was planning on doing. Scatterbrained. I think I'm getting more and more that way. I'm maybe a little worried. Okay, new. Let's try a new Java class. The class will be member.java. And now we have to decide on data elements that will make up our member object. And again, we're thinking of this as a data-backed bean, meaning we're going to pull one record into a single instance of the member object or the member class. So by my notes, we have a private string for memID. Let's double check the yeah, memID is a varchar, so it is a character. We've got member date as a double, but I'm going to use that. I'm going to treat that as a string within my member object, and then we've got a couple of numerics for these year-to-date totals and total date. We don't actually use those in the application that we have right here, so but we'll have them available anyway. So we've got a last name string and a first name string and a middle name. And then we have, I don't know why I did it in 2 lines, but we have strings for the status, member status, and the mem date. Again, I'm going to use that as a string value instead of a date value, but that'll change in the next project. And then we're going to have private long for the password. Well, we'll get to the password in a little bit. And then private doubles for, or double for year-to-date. Oh, you know what? I think I just saw a mistake in my yes, I thought I had fixed this. I'm looking at my TBL members, and the year-to-date total date is supposed to be a date. It's not supposed to be a double. So that's a problem, but you know what? Let's just leave those out for now. We're not going to use those fields. I'm just not going to worry about them. So leave them out. Okay. So we've got these fields that we're interested in from a member standpoint, and we'll have an empty constructor, which is required in order to have a bean. So public member with no parameters, and we'll simply set our globals to appropriate starting values. So member ID and last name, first name, and middle name, all empty strings. Same for status and member date. Now password we need to be a little bit careful with, because we don't probably want a 0, since they might enter a 0 and we don't want to accidentally authenticate their login attempt with a 0 as a password. So I'm going to set it to -1. And I think we can, at this point, refactor and encapsulate all these fields, so it'll build the get and set methods for us. So let's go ahead and do that. So right-click on member, refactor, encapsulate fields, because you never want to expose the raw data elements. Those should be private, and only getter and setter methods public. So we're going to select all, I think, here, because we're going to retrieve data from the database, set it into a member object and then be able to get results back. Yeah, so I think we are going to need all of those, including the set password, because of the data read. JavaDoc, none is my preference, so I'm leaving that at none, and we'll refactor. So everybody okay, looking good on member.java? Got all the get and set methods that we need. All right. Now I can go to my servlets, or start my servlets. So I'll right-click and ask for a new servlet. This is now my club logon servlet. I do want to add my web XML information, and I want my URL pattern to be club logon, not club logon servlet, because it's already coded in the page as club logon. So we'll finish that setup. And there is my servlet, and now I have my web XML that I can modify a little bit. And of course we want to remove the direct print writer out object that we don't need in our modern approach to servlets. I'm just putting that on 2 lines so that so it doesn't slough over my margin in case I want to print this out. Well, web XML can now have logon JSP reset as the welcome page instead of index HTML. So let me grab from Annuity Web that web XML. For some reason I can never seem to remember that the XML tags are welcome file list and then inside that welcome file. So I'm going to Control-C that out of my Annuity Web, go back to ClubDB Web, and paste in welcome file list, welcome file, but of course my welcome file is not Annuity input, it is logon.jsp. I can now delete my index HTML file. No need for that. And I think I'm ready to build my servlet. Oh, wait a minute. What else did I have? I had a member member JSP, member up, something like that. What did I have in my starter code? Let's see what else is here. Member screen JSP. It's probably appropriate to see what the member screen JSP looks like. I don't know that I filled it out with anything, but at least the structure's there. So I'm going to right-click and copy member screen JSP and put that in the project as well, next to my logon JSP. So inside the web folder, member screen, and we'll take a quick look at that one. Right, so I did not set any of my value fields in anticipation of having a member object which is built from a database read. So we'll come back to that. but that'll be my next stop if all goes well on the club logon. Okay. Well, let's see. My URL, I guess I'll be conservative. My string URL I'm actually going to set as logon JSP. I'm going to assume that they fail to authenticate until I know otherwise. And then we are going to need a message string again. So string message, actually not semicolon, let's do a comma. And then I'm going to need a SQL command string, which will initialize to empty. And then I've got user ID. Well, yeah, I guess to distinguish it from member ID. So user ID, empty string. And then I have a password attempt, not the actual password, but I'm going to have a long for pass attempt. Because what comes in from the user screen, the web page, is an attempt at a password, and we have to authenticate and verify. All right, and I'm also then going to need a member object, which I'll call M, and that'll be what I'm building as a part of this logon process. But of course I need the import for that, so it's in red until I say, yep, let's import business.member so that I have that object. Question? Between the strings, yeah, commas. Just to allow multiple entries on the same line. Semicolon at the end, but commas between the string variable names. Okay, so I've been doing a database project in Java 2 lately, but I haven't always done it, so some of you may not have had it with me, or may have come from a Java 2 class that didn't do a database connection. So let's go through the elements that we're going to need to connect to the database. And that will first of all be a what we would call a connection string, which is the information about what database and what SQL engine we're using and what driver we're using to connect to it. So we're going to have a string that I'm going to call the DB URL, the database URL. And in our case, we're going to be using JDBC, that's our driver. So JDBC : MySQL : so it's the MySQL engine. After that colon, double whack localhost, which is the machine we're connecting to, colon 3306, which is the port number that MySQL monitors, listens to, and then a slash, and finally club as the database. Now there's one more thing we're going to set up here, if I can remember how to do it correctly. I probably can't. Put a question mark and use SSL equal false. The system, I think that's the correct, the secure sockets connection to the database we're not going to bother with, so we're setting it false, but I think it will throw an error at least to the command prompt, to the console, if we don't tell it to turn off the SSL. I think it's unhappy about that. Okay, but that should be the correct connection. We will then have a DB user, and we've just set up root. So we don't have separate user level access to the database. The only access we've got is the system root user. And that password is dbpwd, which is my case is Sesame. Now this is still considered okay. It's not ideal to have the password in basically clear text here, but this is a compiled server-side object, so it shouldn't be accessible unless an exploit is discovered. And there are other ways to encrypt, but we won't get into that for our purposes in this first level program. Okay, now the one thing we will need, and I may have given you the shortcut when we did the MySQL install, so there's a shortcut for the JDBC driver. The shortcut is to place it actually in the JDK area. So if you go to your C drive under Program Files, Java, JDK, and then the JRE, LIB, EXT, oh, I don't have it. That would be one place that you can put your JDBC driver so that NetBeans can actually use the database from within the IDE. In fact, let's since I don't have it here, and I may not, let me check my downloads. I may not have downloaded it. I may have forgotten the driver. I seem to have forgotten the driver. Okay, well, I'm going to go back to do that right now just to take you through that step. So under the Oracle website, on your Downloads tab for MySQL, come on. Huh. After you go to the community server or community edition, there is, I believe on this page, connectors. There we go. So we're trying to find the MySQL connectors, and I'm going to choose that. And now we've got the J connector option available to us. So I'm going to click on connector/J, and this is our JDBC driver. It's small. Obviously, we're on a Windows machine, so we want the zip archive rather than the tar, which would be for a Unix machine. So let's download the zip archive. And if you click it and say, yeah, no thanks, just start my download, and save the file, my system is putting it into the default downloads folder. So there's your zip file. I'm going to right-click and open the containing folder, which is just the downloads, my user downloads area. And I really only need the one jar file out of this zip. So I'm going to click into the zip, into the folder inside the zip, and find the MySQL connector java bin.jar executable jar file. And so we're at 5.1.41 current on the website. So I'm going to right-click that, copy, and now I'm going to go back to my PC and that C drive, Program Files, Java, JDK, then the JRE, LIB, EXT, and paste it in. Oh, really? Yes, I want to continue. Okay. So I've got my MySQL connector jar file in the JDK area, but I should have done that with NetBeans not loaded. So now I just realized I don't need anything more from the website. I'm going to close that. But I need to disconnect or shut down, exit my NetBeans, and reload it. Save all. Yep, sorry, didn't save yet. Okay, so we've closed it down, and now if we reopen it, and we go to Services, the Services tab, under Databases, there is a MySQL server, so it's seen the localhost 3306, but it's currently disconnected. So if you select the MySQL server and right-click to connect, oh really? Oh yes, this is right. So the connection has failed because we haven't assigned a password to the root user. So say yes, you want to fix that, and I'm going to be very cavalier about security. I'm going to put in Sesame, and I'm going to say, yep, go ahead and remember that password. Okay, so now if we click OK, now it's connected to the MySQL engine. It sees the club, but we don't actually have a JDBC connector to the club database. So you have to right-click club and say connect again, and then it builds the JDBC connector, and now you can open up club within the JDBC and see the tables, and you can do a right-click and view data, and it'll run you can write select commands, query SQL commands inside the environment, the NetBeans environment, and see the results. And so here's a select star from TBL members, and there's my data. So it's another way of just getting the data quickly if you needed to look at something inside NetBeans rather than going to the MySQL command window. But I still like the command window. Okay, that's services. But on project side, this will work. That jar, that MySQL connector jar that we put, will work for our project as well. But you might want to go ahead and load the jar file, the connector, as a library. So if you do that, you can right-click and add library. And it's okay to select one that's slightly different in version. So if we, where was it? Is it under the M's? Yeah, MySQL JDBC driver there's a default that loads with NetBeans. So it's usually a few additions or updates behind the one from the Oracle website. But let's go ahead and add library for the JDBC, and let's see what we've got. We've got 5.1.23, so that's a little behind, but that's okay. We'll be fine for our purposes. Okay, so back to the servlet now. And we've got the connection established. We're going to try and read the data, first of all from the form, and then use it to read the database. So in a try-catch, because it won't let us do any processing against the database without a try-catch because of SQL errors, we're going to set user ID as a get parameter call, request dot get parameter. Oh, now I see why I called it user ID. Apparently I called it user ID on the form. So user ID, and I'm going to trim that immediately on pulling it from the form. So if you go back and look at the logon, the first field, the input field, does have user ID as its name. So that's where that variable came from in my notes. And then we will try to set the password attempt. So pass attempt will be equal to a long, parse long of the get parameter. So request get parameter for password, and that I apparently spelled out. And I'm going to trim that as well, since it does come in as a string, and we don't want leading or trailing spaces to interfere with our attempt to parse it as a long. We do now have a catch that we know about. We can catch a number format exception E, and our message will be equal to illegal password. I don't know if we even really want to tell them that, but for development purposes, we want to be as obscure as possible and just say, hey, you failed to authenticate. But for our development, we'll see if we'll give messages that are a little bit more meaningful. Okay, we are ready to try, based on the user ID that came in, ready to try reading the database. See if we can find that user in the database. So we do that starting off with a connection object. So we're going to have a connection, CONN, which comes from the driver manager object, and we can do a get connection, and our get connection will have DB, not URL, but DB URL, DB user, and DB password. So we're using those values to build our connection. Oh, I forgot my semicolon there at the end. But there is an import that we'll need, and you have to be a little careful on some of these imports. It doesn't always give you the right one at the top anymore. Yes, so we don't want the COM MySQL JDBC connection. That's actually a subclass. We're just going to use the default Java SQL connection. So import Java SQL connection. And we let's see, what doesn't it like to? Oh, now it says, oh, now you can catch a SQL exception. So we'll go ahead and do that, and we'll catch SQL exception E, and it's going to be unhappy now because it can't find SQL exception. So that is, unless I've misspelled it, that's an import. So we'll right-click and import Java SQL SQL exception. Now it's happy, and the message will need to be just SQL error. And here I'm going to put the message out. Oh, I've been forgetting my BR, my HTML elements on my message. So we'll add those back. All right. So we've got our two possible exceptions. I think that might be all we end up with. But we're now going to need a statement object in order to process a SQL command against the connection. So statement S equals connection. You use the connection to do a create statement. And we're going to create the statement based on, well, no, empty parameter list here, but statement is another import. So, oh, it's third one down, java.sql.statement. And now finally, we'll build our SQL command. I'm going to do it let's see, how do I want to do this? Do I want to introduce it right away or not? Well, I was just creating a statement, wasn't I? Okay, we'll show you the bad way right now, and then the correct way in the next servlet. So one approach with this statement object is then to build your SQL command. So my SQL command is select star from TBL members where, I'm going to add my where clause, where mem ID is equal to, now it's an alpha field, so when I build my SQL command, I need apostrophes around the data value. So I put in a single apostrophe, and then I'm going to end my SQL statement with a double quote there, because I'm going to drop in the user ID field and then close it out with a single apostrophe. So, as I said, this is the less secure way of doing things, because I have what I've done, which is really not good, is that I've taken a direct user input item, user ID. I just did a get parameter for user ID and trimmed it. And I took that value and I put it directly into an embedded SQL command, which opens me up to SQL injection attacks. They might have put not a user ID, but they might have put some kind of SQL statement hoping to get a data dump as a result. So we will fix this little problem with a prepared statement when we get to our next process. But for now, we'll go ahead and run it. We will use a result set R, and what you do is you do an S dot execute query against the SQL string, and that returns your result set. And we need the import for java.sql.resultSet. And what we need to know is there a record? Did we get back a record? We're hoping we got back only one, but we'll just check in this way. If r.next. In other words, if I can move to a record, because it doesn't come back with a record active. So if I can move to a record in the result set, then I'm assuming I got a member hit on the user ID, and it's time to build my data-backed bean object. So M is a new member, and I'm going to run set methods by calling for the result set to give me data. Well, first of all, I've got a set memID, and I'm just going to use the user ID as my set there. Oops, it didn't like me. What did I set? memID might be oh no, they're both lowercase. I and D are both lowercase. Okay, set memID user ID. So that's the user ID I use to pull the data. So I'll put that in my member object. But the next thing I want to do is get the password from the member record and see if it authenticates. So I'm going to do an m.setPassword, not password attempt, but the r get long of the column called password. So I need to go back to the database for a minute and make sure that the field in the member table is called password, which it is. Now there used to be, in earlier versions of this driver, there used to be a quirk in that you had to exactly match the upper and lowercase naming of the fields, even though SQL doesn't care at all whether TBL members has memID the way I wrote it, or all caps, or all lowercase. SQL won't mind, but the driver seemed to care. I don't think that's true anymore. I think the driver will let us use any combination, but I'm just going to follow the naming that I see here. So password with a capital P is and it is a long. So I'm going to pull from the result set the password value and put it in password. But now I need to know if the user authenticates by that password. And I'm actually going to have the member authenticate itself in a sense. So before I continue, I'm going to go back to member and add a couple of things. In the member, in addition to the actual password, I'm going to have pass attempt. And I'm going to have a get, or rather a set, for that value. So pass attempt here is going to lead to, let's see if I needed, but I don't think I need both of them. I think I just need a set. Once we set the password attempt, we don't need to go any farther. So here's what I'm going to have it do. And this is not necessarily the best way, or it's just a way of doing it. I'm going to have a public void set pass attempt, which brings in a long PAT, pass, or PATT, pass attempt. And I'm going to set this pass attempt equal to PATT. And I better set it to a 0, I guess, in the empty constructor. So up here, we set password to -1. I'm going to set password attempt just to 0 to indicate no attempt is seen yet. And then I'm going to create a method called isAuthenticated. So if you have a Boolean-based method, is the key word that you use even in a bean. So public Boolean is authenticated, which is going to ask the following: if this password, the actual password in the object, so the one we read from the database, if it's greater than 0, that means I've got something. Then I am going to ask further, and you could do this in one line, but I'll do it in a couple of lines here. Then I'm going to say, all right, if the password that we have is equal to the password attempt, then I return true. We're okay, we authenticated. Otherwise, I return false. Now you could actually just return password is equal to password attempt, but I'll do it this way. Okay. So we now have an ability to take the attempt into our member object and then have the member object tell us whether it authenticated or not. Again, is that a better way? No, not necessarily. It's just a way. Everybody okay on that? Okay, log on servlet. I'm now going to, in addition to setting the member ID, once I think I have a data element, I'm going to do a m.set password attempt, which will be the pass attempt. Then once I set password out of the result set into my member object, I should be able to inquire whether or not that member is now authenticated. So if M is authenticated, I'm going to do one set. Right now, since I'm running out of time tonight, I'm just going to set my message to member authenticated. The alternative is failed to authenticate. And yeah, that'll do for now. I'm not going to worry about the member object going onto the session yet. That'll be our next class session. But I at least have now a connection. I can run the SQL statement. I can get the result set, and I can tell if the member authenticated or not. Plus, I've got some errors. So the last thing I'll do is set my message onto the request object. So request.setAttribute MSG, and then I will dispatch myself to the URL, which right now will always, the way I set it up, will always take me back to the logon screen. So we'll do a request dispatcher. Disp is a get servlet context get request dispatcher based on URL. I do need the import for that. Java servlet request dispatcher, and then I disp forward the request and response. And that will take me to the URL, which will be back to logon screen. So I guess on the logon screen, I better put my little message down so I know what just happened. So after the form, I'll use an expression call to display my message. And we can finally test something. So let's try a save all and a clean and build. See if it likes the code that it sees so far. All right. We'll run it. Oops, I've got the wrong project as the default project, so I don't even know if it built. There's my web credit card. Sorry. Let's go back. ClubDB. Set that as my main project. All right, let's try a clean and build again. See if it finished building ClubDB. I don't know. I didn't even notice if it did that before. Now I'll run it. Okay, and if we just take a quick look, if we do a select star from TBL members, I've got Nancy Zimmerman, Z005, with a password of 293. So let's see what it says if I give Z005 and no password. It says illegal password, empty. All right, so I'll try Z005 with a wrong password, 299. Member failed to authenticate. Store the password, no, not for this site. What else can I get? I can do a I can do a SQL injection. Select star from TBL codes. This will blow up, of course. Oh, that didn't give me anything. Interesting. Well, let's try Z123. I thought I'd get a SQL exception. Did I not? Let's see what happened here. 111. Stop. Why is it doing this? This is quite annoying. I'm not getting messages, so let me change this. Let me reset here. So on my ClubDB properties, run property is to run with Firefox. All right. So what is happening when I'm in my servlet and not getting a hit? Did I forget a message somewhere? I didn't think so. Let's debug this and see what happens. So I want to debug at my number format exception, at my SQL exception, and at my r.next. So let's debug main project. Okay, so if I give it Z005 and I give it an illegal password, now, yeah, so it's illegal password, so that was what was expected, and I run it, and we're back, illegal password. If I give it a Z009 with a legal password. Let's see where, oh, it's not hitting a debug. So let's follow this through. It's something I'm not thinking about here. Okay, so, I didn't have an else on my r.next. So that's my problem. That's why I'm not seeing the messages that I thought I should see, because, yes indeed, I have it right in my notes and skipped right over it. Okay, so if r.next doesn't work, then we've got an else condition, and so message here is, and this is a message you wouldn't give out, but I'm going to do it for now, user not found in DB. So that's what I was expecting to see. Now it should be happy. Let's run it again. So now I can do Z009 with a valid numeric password, but it says user not found in DB. Z005 with a wrong password says member failed to authenticate, but finally Z005 with that 293 and my member authenticated. Okay, so we've got the beginnings of a servlet for authentication. There's more work to be done. Obviously, if the member is authenticated, then build rest of member object and set destination to member screen and set session variables if needed. So I know I gave you the credit card to finish this week, but if you have a chance, you can take a look at working on that code to see if we can get from the logon servlet to the next JSP, and of course that member screen will need to have expression code in it so that it can actually display the member data, but we'll pick it up here next week and move along quickly with this one, so we're ready to give you at least a month to work on the final project while we're doing our final persistence homework assignment. All right, thanks.